Okay, well, maybe we will kick off, Kerry. Thank you all for coming today. We have Kerry Williams here, who's the founder of Accessible Accommodation. I'm really excited for today, Kerry. I think accessible tourism, as we all know, is a really important path that we should all be walking. So I'll hand over to Kerry and there'll be time for questions afterwards. And thank you for being here.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to be sharing with you some insights as well as some simple tips and recommendations. And I would love it if you could just write on a piece of paper, it's 3 columns, short, medium, and long term, because at the end we'll have some questions and answers, and I'd love to get feedback from you if there's anything that you've learned from the session that you could potentially implement for your own property. So we'll get started, and I will share with you some information. So we have 2 websites, accessibleexperiences.com and accessibleaccommodation.com. Experience is a lot smaller website, but it is, we're going through a relaunch of it very shortly. So everything we do is based on what our followers tell us that they need when they're traveling for a great guest experience, whether it's consulting or inclusion training or our accreditation. So we have a user-led accreditation program, and Australian Tourism Data Warehouse has adopted our program about 3.5 years ago. And we've just signed a contract with them that actually takes it and elevates it to the next level. So I will share some info with you shortly. So we have a large amount of website visitors to our page. We run inclusion training programs that are online or in person, and we do consulting, such as with Sue from CSTACS, and we employ people with lived experience of disability. So that's a bit about who we are. And I'm just going to share some data with you. So when you look at accessible tourism, it's not just the 21% of Australians who live with a disability to consider. And this is particularly relevant for Tasmania in that the over 65s, as we age, our access needs will only continue to increase. And that's 17%, and that's going to be doubling by 2050. And of course, you've got things like multi-generational travel, parents, grandparents, and kids. So it is quite a meaningful travel sector to consider. We have 4 tiers of accreditation, and this the reason I'm sharing this, it helps you understand and break down accessibility needs into categories, but also to understand where the demand and supply comes from. So assisted walking category, I've actually just updated that. It's now 31% of all our website visits as of yesterday. This went from 5% 15 months ago. So what we're seeing is assisted walking is a walking frame or a cane user, and it's mostly over 65s. So that has grown significantly for us. Independent wheelchair users, when they can transfer from the bed to the shower to the loo. An assisted wheelchair user is where they have high needs such as electric beds, commodes, etc. And we've got our sensory assisted category. At the moment, it represents about 2 to 3%. But having said that, majority of them actually can use non-accessible rooms. So they don't necessarily come to our website. When you look at the data, so this is from 7 figures a year in bookings over the last 7.5 years. One thing that to consider, so if you have, you mentioned a brewery earlier, if you have accommodation on a venue where there is, for example, a wedding venue or some event venue, if a bride-to-be, he or she will need to book accommodation as well as the venue, and the chances are at least 2 or 3 people in that wedding party have access needs. So the group travel consideration is really important to remember. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab a drink. February to July is our most busiest season, and this is for check-ins, not for bookings. Now, the reason for that is, especially in highly populated areas, for example, Hobart, navigating crowds at Salamanca markets, etc., is a challenge. And also heat sensitivity. In the middle of January is actually our quietest time of the year for check-ins in January. So when you look at your off-season, this accessibility catering to accessible tourism can help you meet that off-season low demand that you may presently have. The other consideration is people with disabilities rarely travel alone, but also they travel with support workers and carers. So the multiplier effect is that they book non-accessible rooms for those needs. So another consideration is that our average night stay is 4.3 nights. Now, the more remote the location, the higher the number of nights stayed. And so if you think about what I like to do when I'm traveling, is I like to stay one night here, one night there. When I was traveling with my mum, who lived with a disability, we would stay in one spot and then radiate outwards with our day-to-day excursions. And also there's, $1,684 is our average spend per booking. And that's just accommodation, by the way. Some other considerations is it's not just for tourism. Catering to accessibility with your tourism space can also have an add-on effect for medical stays. For example, if you're near a local hospital, for outpatient treatment, if you have self-contained accommodation for NDIS, because disability can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And so say someone who lives in Launceston has now has a disability and is coming out of rehab, they need their home modifications done. So that can happen to any place at any moment. And then your accident commission as well, they're responsible for the person with a disability from the moment they've had a motor vehicle accident throughout their life. And so they will need to book accommodation. And then through natural disasters, our offices are open from 8 a.m. till 11 p.m. purely to help evacuees finding emergency accommodation. So the multiplier effect is not just for tourism, it's also for medical and longer term stays. Please excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold and I'm getting a bit throaty. So I would like to share with you some practical, simple tips, some of them that don't cost a thing, and some that can really have a great experience. What I will say is when catering to accessible tourism, if you try to do it all at once, it becomes completely overwhelming. So in the case, for example, with Sea Stacks, as Sue is about to open, this journey was over a several year period. And Sue is also doing inclusion training for her staff. So she's actually done accessibility over an extended period of time. And that's a smarter way to do it rather than coming out of this webinar and going, right, I'm going to do everything and I'm going to do it now, because it can become a bit overwhelming. So in your short, medium and long-term objectives, I'll share with you some tips very shortly. If you aren't physically accessible, so once you do the advice that I'm about to give you, and if you find, look, there's just no way, it's a historic building, I cannot make it physically accessible, do consider people with sensory disabilities such as sensory processing disorders such as autism, low vision and blindness, deafness, and also invisible disabilities such as food intolerances. And another tip is if you have staff, ask, does anyone in your family live with a disability, or do you live with a disability yourself? These people would be great to appoint as an accessibility champion for your business, because it really helps you be accountable. So where to start? What I recommend, if you're not accessible, or even if you are, is hire a wheelchair for the day from the local pharmacy. It's usually about $40. And roll around your accommodation or your experience and see for yourself what barriers there might be, such as, is your carpet hard to glide over, or are your doors hard to open? If you can't, as I said, if you can't be physically accessible, consider sensory. And have a measured approach. This is why I'm talking about short, medium, and long-term objectives. Another thing, 6 out of 10 accommodation providers that say they're accessible around the world do not have any information on their website to say that they're accessible. The bathroom is the most important photograph that you'll ever have, because if you can't go to the loo and go have a shower, you won't be able to stay. And so take a photograph of your accessible bathroom and make sure that that's on your website and have a description of what features you have. Another recommendation is what we find is staff, especially your 20 to 30-year-olds, are very hesitant or fearful that they may say the wrong thing, or they may not understand disability. And so inclusion training is a worthy of consideration. And if you need any advice, we've got a consulting service. So if you're already accessible, do consider the accreditation, because it's not about a pretty badge, it converts to bookings. Do that role mile in hiring a wheelchair, because you may already be accessible, but you might find some obstacles such as a bulky coffee table might prevent you from getting to the sofa, and this will help give you some insights. Review your website and see, if you have accessibility, are you telling people about it? And consider the training if you want to. So the roll a mile in my shoes exercise is really quite useful, and you might want to take a screenshot of this, but this is the checklist of the most challenges faced by people with disabilities, such as the shower rows not being lowered, or the bath towels not being within reach. So do take a screenshot of this, and if you want, I can email you that as a checklist. So now we get to your short, medium, and long-term objectives. So here are some tips that won't cost a thing. I apologize for the little error there. Now, shower nozzles. If you're sitting on the shower seat and you can't reach the shower nozzle to rinse off, they're going to have to get dressed and then call down from reception and say, could you please come and lower it for me? So it's a very simple thing that to have housekeeping always lower that shower nozzle. Provide a couple of extra towels, because when you're having to transfer from the shower seat to the wheelchair, for example, or your walking frame, it is really beneficial to have extra towels. And if you have self-contained property, 9 times out of 10 when I do site visits, the crockery and glassware is always in the overhead cupboards. I do recommend considering lowering those so that they're easy to reach. The way you look at it is to think about the person traveling independently, not relying on their partner to help them reach these items. If you have air conditioning or a remote control of your TVs, have them on the coffee table or anywhere that's lowered and nicely within reach rather than high up on the wall. And less is best. So if you cannot access a sofa because a coffee table is in the way, a simple solution is a C-style table, and I can share with you some images if you need any help or advice on that. But less is best when it comes to furnishings, and avoid any rugs wherever possible, because especially for seniors, they're a trip hazard if they're using a walking frame or a cane. Another thing is a late check out time. So generally your housekeeping, if you've got a multi-site property, your housekeeping on a deadline, they're 10 till 2 and they've got to be finished and done by 2. So it may be worthy consideration of reducing the stress on housekeeping, but also the added benefit of guests with disabilities do take longer to get ready in the morning. So if you can offer, say, an 11 a.m. checkout, even if you change the check-in to 3 p.m., it just really helps as well. And if you can move the beds off center, now the reason I say that is we need as much space to access the property, to access the bed from the door as possible. So if you can move the beds off center, even if you have to reposition a picture frame permanently so it doesn't look a bit odd, or do it on request, that will really help in larger wheelchair users in particular being able to access it. For experiences, so for example, with the brewery, you may want to consider offering a quiet time. For example, a lot of supermarkets do this, say between 2 and 4 on a Thursday. They turn the music off. They turn down some of the lighting, and they have this specifically for people with autism or sensory processing disorders. Do please provide information on your website and your accessibility. I know it's not glamorous, but if you've got an accessible bathroom in the brewery, please take a photograph of it and put it on your website, because people will see that and go, oh, cool, I know that I can go to the bathroom. If you've got a level access, or if you don't, I'll show you some examples of what you can do to fix that. But just have a close-up photograph of that level access as well. If you have a gift shop, for example, consider and look at your items. Are they within reach of a seated person using a wheelchair or short-statured person? And make sure the staff know if someone rings up and says, what accessibility do you have? Make sure that you have a quick checklist for them to be able to communicate that. And this works so well. When you have an experience and an accommodation provider close by, cross promote each other on socials. Talk about your accessibility, because if they can't stay, they can't play. And so that's why accommodation is always the most challenging thing to find. But this is a really good way to let people know that they can not just stay, but they can also experience. Some inclusion training. We have some resources for you. With the accreditation program, we have a tiered accessibility accreditation program, as I said. The fact is 80% of our followers will use the website to book directly once they've looked you up on our site. And it is a really good for AI discovery, because we've built it for AI discovery. With online training, we have inclusion training. It's a 1-hour course. We've also written a module in conjunction with Welcome with Pride, so LGBTIQ plus community, and that really helps build an inclusive culture and enhance your reputation. Within the consulting, what we do is we work with new developments and renovations to give you simple tips on how to create a welcoming experience. And so that might be a worthy consideration as well. And we can provide you with some insights and data as well. I've just realized, sorry, whilst I'm just going to stop sharing, and I'm realizing I'm missing a bunch of slides for some reason. So while I fix that up, because I've got to give you some more tips, do all of you have accessibility within your venues? You can take everyone off mute. Is there anyone that doesn't have accessibility? Put it that way.
Well, Kerry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had a phone call with you the other day. I'm Fiona from Harrison Agents.
Yes.
And we're just looking at what it would look like for us to bring on a portfolio of properties that meet those accessible needs. So no, I don't have anything at the moment, but super keen to be able to service this market.
Oh, that's wonderful, Fiona. Is there anyone else who does not have accessibility? So everyone does? Okay. So here are some, my apologies, just 1 second. I'm just trying to get this. Very odd. Just bear with me 1 minute, please. My apologies. So here are some simple tips. Now that I know you all have accessibility, almost all have accessibility. My recommendations are as follows. Never say you are fully accessible, because what is accessible to one is different to someone else with access needs. I'm just going to enlarge the screen for you. Can everyone see that all right? Yep. in the alt text, so on your website, my suggestion is when you have the photograph of your accessible bathroom, put in there step-free access, step-free shower chair, because people with low vision use this for search as well. If you have videos, always use subtitles. Subtitles generator is very easy to do. And another tip is, even if you hire a wheelchair for the day, but have people with disabilities in situ in your images on your website. So for example, even if you just have an empty wheelchair in next to a glide under sink, those are simple things that can really help communicate that messaging. Always use a large and bold font. You'll see within the presentation that there is a lot of very bold font, and that's the reason is if it's a 12 to 14 point font. So even if you have a dedicated accessibility drop down menu, just make sure that that font is very bold as well. With your brewery, if you have menus, a 14 to 16 point font. Arial is a really good font to use, but even if you just have one menu set aside for someone who may have low vision, that's a suggestion as well. So here are some examples where properties are photographed in situ, someone living with a disability, making it easy to understand. With your another thing is, in tourism, about 90% of the traditional guest will browse using their mobile device. With our case, it's about half. And so the desktop use of website is really important. And as I said, have photographs of your bathrooms. If you have additional features such as a freestanding shower chair, also have that in there as well. But the top 4 pieces of information you should have on your website as an accommodation provider is what type of shower seat, whether it's freestanding or wall mounted. Is the shower open plan or enclosed? Are there grab rails in the shower and in the toilet? And what your door widths are. So even if you're not going to become accredited on our website, if you have those key pieces of information, it's going to help ensure you get found. Some other tips: when you've got a booking for someone with a disability, often, especially in hotels, the accessible room is usually a much larger room. So people without disabilities try to book that. So the best way to ensure that the end user, the people with disabilities, get to use the room who need it is a simple wording is, I understand you booked an accessible room. What can we do to help make your stay effortless? So what that does is someone without a disability will go, oh, no, it's all right. I don't have a disability. And people with disabilities will feel so much more welcome and heard and seen. Compendiums. I know most accommodation providers have moved to digital compendiums and experience providers as well. But again, same with the less use of mobile device. What we find is that there's a preference for old school physical compendium rather than digital compendium. And another thing is between 30 and 40% of our followers are repeat guests, and very much word of mouth. So from a marketing perspective, Facebook is the most used for this sector. This is the customer journey. So I just wanted to share with you before, during, and after. So here are some tips for you on that whole customer journey. So before they find you, well, how do they find you? So that's why I've covered a lot about what you put on your website. Other key aspects are, for example, if you are near a hospital, state which hospital you're nearby and how many kilometres it is away, because of those medical visits people will want to book. And have you communicated on your website that you welcome people with disabilities? And also be clear on what you do and don't offer. Like I said, never say you're fully accessible. What you will find with people living with autism is they might ring you up and say, how far is the car park to the reception? How far is it to the room? How many levels up? The reason that they're asking all this information is they need detailed and accurate information. And so they can predict and their anxiety levels are lowered. So just a little bit of patience really does help. Now, once they've arrived, if you don't have accessible parking on site, find the nearest accessible parking nearby. It might be street parking or it might be a public parking space. Check that your doors are easy to open. Mostly with hotels, they're very, very hard to open. Also look at your signage. Is your signage really bold, bright, and easy to read? And are your pathways firm and flat? So you might, as you're hiring that wheelchair and rolling around to check it, you might see, for example, that there's some bumpy paths that may need rectification. And how are they greeted and welcomed? 9 times out of 10, hotel reception counters are too high. So my suggestion is always to come round from reception and greet them, even if you complete the check-in and just hand the keys over. A variety of seating heights as well. So, for example, especially in restaurants, in your F&B section or in your experience areas, having high top tables are not really useful for someone living with a physical disability in most cases, but having a variety of seating heights as well. And if you do have on-site restaurant and and accommodation, if you know someone is using a wheelchair, alert the staff that John has booked for 8 a.m. for breakfast. He's a wheelchair user. Could you please remove a chair so that John can glide in without anyone looking at him and him feeling self-conscious? If you have digital services such as assisted tech, make sure you have clear instructions on those. Once they're staying, have a look, like I said, partner up with your local experience provider. Because if you have a little bit of even just a one-page flyer on what accessible experiences are nearby, it's that multiplier effect of other businesses benefiting from someone living with a disability visiting your premises. And also what nearest medical facilities there are if you're not near a hospital. And with your bathroom, again, 9 times out of 10 of site visits I do, especially wall-mounted amenities, the handyman has placed them right away from the shower seat. Always make sure that they're easy to reach. With doors, not all doors can be, because fire safety, they are hard to open. It's the second biggest complaint about issue. But you can adjust the hinge of the door tension to see if that might just allow easier access without impacting on fire safety. Like I said, a large variety of menus and printed compendium as well as your digital option. And most properties have new TVs, but if you don't and you need to upgrade a TV, make sure it's got closed caption on it. This is really important, the post-stay. Like I said, 30 to 40% of our followers will book again and again and again. And so ask for feedback. Once you start getting something that is a common thread, then it's worth actioning. If it's just one feedback and you've never heard the same feedback since, that's okay. Everyone's unique with their needs, but this will help you in identifying what potential obstacles you might have and make some adjustments. But remarket, say about 6 months after their stay, send an email out with some form of offer, because having them stay will be really, really beneficial. And use Facebook. If you look at your local Facebook groups within Tasmania as well, just saying you've got accessibility and a post really helps get that word of mouth out. So I'm just going to stop sharing now. We've got a little bit more time. So what I'd love to do is just ask Sue from C-Stacks to perhaps give us a little bit of an overview of why you decided to become accessible, and B, within the journey that you're going through, what have the key things that you've learned, Sue? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right, Kerry, because it is a journey, and is something that when obviously it was a new build, so there is a requirement for us to have a certain percentage of our units that needed to be accessible. And what we really wanted to do early on is really make that experience for people who wanted to use an accessible room as being as seamless as possible and being integrated into the whole experience as well. So what that really meant was, we wanted to use the same timbers and products and textiles as everybody else that every other unit was having. So part of the original design, we were very lucky because we're starting from scratch. And part of the original design was still to ensure that we incorporated the feel and the experience, and that people using our accessible rooms were not left behind.
Yeah, actually, one thing I did notice is just how stylish your accessibility is. And what that does is people without disabilities can stay in that room without going, oh, it's a disability room. And then people with disabilities don't feel like it's a hospital.
Exactly. And that was what was really important to us. So all of the accessible options that we provide, it's actually an opt-in. So if people choose to have or require grab rails, they can actually tick them on the box on when they make their reservation. They'll have a checklist of items that we've got available and what they want and what they don't want. And all of those grab rails can actually be removed from the bathrooms if they just want a roll in, roll out experience, or walk in, walk out. It's completely up to them. So a lot of what we're providing is customizable as well. We have the high-low adjustable beds, but instead of just having one, we decided to have two, so that if a person is comfortable sleeping on one side of the bed rather than the other, they still had that flexibility that they would have at home. Yeah, so those beds can be made as a king bed, or that can be made as two singles and separated apart as well.
And what that does is, if someone is traveling with a carer, you can split it. But there's a perception that people with disabilities, are not married or don't have families, and it's so far from the truth. And so they still want to feel like a couple, having that bed. But also the over 65s absolutely love adjustable beds. The convenience of having their head, knees, and feet raise and lower, and that's something that that I'm aware of. There's only 2 others in Tasmania that have anything near that. And so it's these little touches. Yes, it might have been quite an investment in the beginning, but it's those points of difference that really ensure that not just people with disabilities feel comfortable, but even the aging population feel comfortable. Did anyone consider, I'm just throwing this out to everyone, did anyone consider or not realize just how big the market for accessibility is?
Oh, we had no idea when we started on this down this road that it was a huge market, and I suppose in our end of that marketplace as well, that it is a very big and growing emerging market, especially for international high-end travel. It is a huge, and especially the aging market as well. So our property is actually sort of connected by a series of boardwalks. And one of the things that we realised early on, even if somebody is maybe uses a walking stick or a walking aid, just navigating to and from their building to the car park, a walking stick may tire them out. So, we've purchased a couple of manual wheelchairs that if guests want to use, that's just available for them to use for the duration of their stay. And that may be an aged issue.
Yeah. So I'm just going to throw some questions. So Mary, we'll start with you first, Mary. Is there anything within what we've covered that you think maybe could fit in a short, medium, or long-term goals for your business at all? Or is there anything you have questions about?
Not at this stage. I'm just here to listen and learn. I'm with ECTT, so yeah.
No
But it's
worries.
really interesting listening to all of this and hearing the different experiences that people already have in their businesses and various ways that I'd never thought of. Not that I work in accommodation specifically, but it's really nice as well as someone who is a neurodiverse person to be able to think about all these things, and especially with the low intensity experiences and the ease of how to get into a place and be in a place. Sometimes it's nicer to understand what you're going to expect to kind of relieve a lot of that anxiety. And as someone that does experience that, it's actually really cool to listen to it being said in this forum. So yeah.
Yeah, Mary, you're so right. It is anxiety. It's the number one. If you looked at the pyramid of challenges people with disabilities face, no matter what the disability, it's the anxiety. And if you can, as a business, any one of you, help overcome that anxiety by providing information, then you're already halfway there in terms of your accessibility journey in growing revenue. Sam, could you perhaps share if there was anything within a short, medium, and long-term objectives, or do you have any questions from what we discussed?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me there? Have you got me there?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, we run adventure tours. So I was just trying to find things in there that might apply. Seems a lot about the accommodation space. But we run buggy tours and have found quite a bit of popularity in that space. People who have issues with accessibility into the national parks, and that's something we're really trying to grow in our business, and quite excited about the opportunities because we have seen there is a good demand for that.
Sam, what I'd recommend, look up a guy called Jezza Williams, no relation to me, in New Zealand.
Yep.
Now, Jezza has adapted, in Queenstown jet boat racing. He's adapted bungee jumping, all these sort of things. And also, I was presenting at South Australian Tourism last week, and a gentleman came up and he said, I do accessible, so I do walks, long walks, and I would love to cater to accessible tourism, but the terrain is simply not doable. And I said to him, well, how about even considering the sensory category? For example, what if you had a specific walk that catered to people living with deafness and had an Auslan interpreter join you on your walk, who can then share all your education information on your walk? So there's ways to think creatively in terms of an adventure experience. And I'm happy to, if you send me an email, send you some links and some tips. There's adapted mountain bike rides, vehicles that you can use, all-terrain wheelchairs, and so forth. So there's lots of different ways you could potentially make your business accessible, Sam.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, currently we have the side-by-side vehicles, the buggies, and we're finding we're getting a lot of interest from this market, where they're not able to walk in the national park. So we feel we've got that part of it, and we're just learning about how to market it or the details, how best to to make it known and to make them feel comfortable and find us.
All right. Well, I'm happy to introduce you to Jezza from Making Tracks, TRAX. I could think of no better person to give you advice on that. Jen, no worries. Jen, is there anything that you've taken from this that you could fit into a short, medium, or long term, or is there anything you've got questions or unsure of or have learnt from today?
Look, I came along just to look at a different perspective. With our brewery plan, we've actually built a lot of accessibility stuff into it because I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I have accessibility issues. my dad is deaf and has a cochlea. So, we've got plans to use like Bluetooth tech to be able to have people tune in, stick a Bluetooth mic on yourself so that they can actually tune into you and hear you. With my rheumatoid arthritis, I actually have a lot of food intolerances, we'll say. I mean, they're kind of allergies, but sort of not. And I actually find that's something lacking in a lot of restaurants. So, like, for instance, there's no way I'm going to eat bread or pizza anywhere because whilst I'm gluten intolerant, I'm also potato intolerant, and potato starch is often used as a replacement for gluten. So part of our plan is to have a hidden page on our website that people can access. So, okay, so there's crackers, right? What is actually in the cracker? So I know if I can eat it. So there's lots of stuff like that, but I'm always after like new tips. And I've got 4 nieces and nephews who are ASD, and 2 of them are between 25 and 30. So I've been exposed to that for a long time. But again, everybody, I mean, it's a spectrum, so everybody's needs are different. So, I'm always after, more tips on how to make them feel more comfortable, I guess, because I only know from my sort of personal experience and their friends.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say for reception desks, using a walking stick sometimes myself, a walking stick holder at the reception desk, because if you're right-handed, you generally have the stick in your right hand, and then you've got to write things to sign in, and you've got nowhere to put your stick.
We always suggest, come around from reception and sit down on the chair, because you're face to face and eye to eye, and you're creating a more connected experience. But you're right, Jen. So what I would say is you will never please everyone, because there are so many different types of disability. But just the fact that you are looking at food intolerances as a specialty, you will then become known for that, and word of mouth. And so Facebook groups for people with food intolerances, you join those and you say, hey, this is our business, this is what we offer. And by the way, I live with food intolerances and this is what we've done. So using social media, especially Facebook, and getting that word out there, because it'll be your edge. And we all need an edge as business operators. We all need that point of difference. So well done. That's really great. And Stuart, is there anything that you've learned from this, or any questions you have, or anything that you think you could do? You're on mute. No, we can't hear Stuart. Oops. Well, is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask? This is a forum that just gives you that opportunity to open up any questions while we hopefully get Stuart volume back.
Kerry, I would like to offer so I've got a short, medium, and long that I'm taking away from today. But for the short, what I'd like to do, whilst I don't have any properties that meet those needs at the moment, we're only new, we've only been operating for 6 weeks. I would like everybody who's here today to, if they're interested, being in one of our guides that we'll be launching on our website, just to send me your details, and for no cost, we'll just pop that into a guide with it, and it's a special accessibility guide that I'd like to build.
Wonderful. That's being found. Whether it's a blog or an accessibility guide, make sure it's digital, because that's how you're going to be found. And it's all word of mouth and connecting each other's businesses, so that as a collective, you can have far more impact.
Yep.
I'm going to be doing a road trip to Tasmania the last week of August. We're filming content. So far, there's about 7 properties that we've booked. But if anyone does have accessibility and wants to participate, do let me know. But at the end of the day, I started accessible accommodation because my mum lived with a disability, and we were on a road trip in Tasmania. After many incidents of the same thing happening, we got to the place, and I'd asked, is there a step-free shower? Yes, there was, and there was a 10-centimeter lip in the shower. and that was Mount Everest to Mum, who lived with a physical disability. And it prompted me to start this 7.5 years ago. But what I learned from that, when I spoke to the owner, I said, "Why did you tell me it was step free when it wasn't?" And she said, "I didn't realize that was a step." And what it made me realize is that the more we know, the better experience we can create. Because my mum had to hand wash for a whole week for that to stay. And no one should have to compromise like that. So I do hope that at least some of these tips, and I apologize for the presentation missing a whole bunch of slides. I just hope that it's given you a little bit of thought as to where you're on in your accessibility journey, whether you're starting or you're at the end, right near the end, ready to open. But it is a business benefit, but it's also the right thing to do, and it can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. So it's great that you're at least considering what you could do with your business. If you have further thoughts, if you have any questions, please, my number is 0477 103 808, 0477 103 808. I'd be happy to chat to you and recommend some people that you can connect with, such as, for example, there was in Northern Territory, Catherine Outback Adventures. If you ever want to see what a good website it looks like on accessibility, Catherine Outback Adventures. They have done such wonders in the way they've done their website. So I'm happy to share any tips or any places or experiences that I can think would relate to your business to help you.
That's been great, Kerry. Thank you so much. Does
It's
anyone
a
have anything
pleasure.
else to add? Any other queries or questions?
Nope.
Well, I will share this online on our industry Facebook page, and it'll be on our industry website as well if people want to come back to this, and that will have Kerry's contact details as well, just in case you do want to reach out to her. And hopefully we can connect when you come for your visit to Tasmania, and you can come and see some of these operators and list them on your accessibility website.
And if anyone wants to see accessibility done so well, check out Sue at C-Stacks. And I applaud you, Sue, for what you've done. And I can't wait to see, in 2 years' time, just what your occupancy rate is for your accessible rooms, because I know they'll be really good.
Thanks, Kerry. Thanks. If anybody is interested in having a look through, if they do want to contact me, I'm more than happy to walk them through, make some time, and they can share the experience.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. Thank you, Kerry.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.